So the other day, like any other normal person, I was on eBay looking at phones. And I have this habit of just looking at used phones, and anybody who's an automotive enthusiast or a phone enthusiast, you guys know that it's fun to just go back and look at listings for phones and look at what's on the market and what the prices are. So while I was browsing the other day, I found this beauty. Now, if you can't tell, next to this phone, you guys are in for a treat, because this is the Galaxy Note 1. So the Galaxy Note, that's all it was called. And this phone is, I don't know how to describe it other than this is the phone that started the big screen revolution. Phones around the time this came out were completely different. Even Apple was doing something completely different. And this is just a marvel. So let me just start off and show you guys what it's like compared to the Note 8, which was just released a couple of months ago, compared to this, which came out 7 years ago. So this phone came out 7 years ago. And just to give you guys an idea of what other phones are like, here's an iPhone that came out 7 years ago. So look at that difference. This looks like a little toy phone, and the entire phone can sit in the display of the Note. So it's just, it's mind-boggling to me. So let me start off by showing you guys some of the differences here. And let's turn the phone around back. So Samsung design has changed a lot over the years, and I'm actually, I wasn't a big fan of this style of design. So what this is this is an all-plastic build. And for the time, it was fine, but compared to the iPhones, which were really a lot better, I didn't find them nice. I didn't think that the Samsung phones looked good or had high quality. And another thing I'll be open to say is that when this phone came out, I thought it was stupid. I thought that anybody who bought this was just an idiot. And I was one of those Apple fanboys who just, and I clearly remember saying, why would anybody have a phone of this size? It looks so stupid when it's when they have it in their ear, or how do they even put this in their pocket? And today I rock phones that are probably bigger than this, and actually they are bigger than this. So, you know, everything comes full circle, guys. So the only thing I can say, take away from that would be open to things. Don't be closed-minded, and don't be fanboys. So looking at just this, look at the difference. So this came out a month after this phone. So think about that. This came out in September of 2011. This came out in October. So let me put the iPhone 4S to the side now, and let's look at the Galaxy Note 8. Sorry, the Galaxy Note 1. And it had one of Samsung's really known about features in the time, which was a removable back with a removable battery and insertable micro SD card and SIM slot. So this one still has the SD card and SIM slot, but no longer do we have a removable battery or a back cover. So I'm okay with the battery being non-removable, to be very honest with you guys. I was never the kind of person who would swap out batteries anyways. I would charge them. So it wasn't really that big of a deal to me. The one thing that the biggest big change about this phone is how wide it is. So this phone is so much wider than this. So over the years, Samsung has thinned down the Note series and made them longer. So you guys can just see how much longer this phone is, and consider the fact that this is all display basically. So just look at the display sizes of the two. So this is a 6.3 inch display. This is a 5.3 inch. So big gap when it comes to display. And one of the key features of this phone was its stylus. Now again, this was something else that I criticized until date. You know, I think it's fair to say that the stylus hasn't really been a very vital part of any smartphone, but it's cool to have. So the stylus still works. It had its features, and it had its cool little S Note features and all those things that you could do. And it still works really well. So let me just fire up that Notes app to show you guys. So you can have these notes which you could draw, and it was okay. It wasn't the technology has definitely improved. Let me just show you guys what I mean. So there's just these features that basically were unheard of on the iPhone, so you couldn't really do all this. And while the newer iPhones now have these features in their Notes app, you could draw and stuff, this was fairly a different concept, and it was targeted towards power users, and this phone definitely was something for power users. And looking at everything else, it just looks so different. Everything seems like it's all changed. This old crappy UI. So I still remain till date, and I think that TouchWiz used to be the crappiest worst piece of software that a mobile operating system has. And just look at the way it works. It's not that good. Compared to the new Samsung Experience, really, it's just horrible. And Samsung Experience still gets a lot of hate. I don't hate it anymore. I actually like it. But this one is just not good. And you guys could probably hear those traditional sounds. Let me just put it up to the microphone. So those sounds are still, those kind of take me back to the day where all the older phones had it. As I said, one of the key differences here is that width. This phone is so wide, it definitely feels like you're holding a big phone. This phone, it's big, but it feels a lot easier to hold because it's so much thinner. The length is what's difficult to manage with this phone, but this phone was just how wide it was. So it definitely would be something that would take a lot of getting used to, especially if you're coming from something along this, along the size of this, which could be basically, it would fit in your palm like this. This, no way. You could reach and stretch all you want. You're not grasping this in your hand. And it was such a cool little, it's so cool to see how design has changed. Now let's look at some of the hardware. One of the coolest bits about the Note 1 that I was really surprised to learn is that the Note used an AMOLED display back in 2011. iPhones, for the matter, they only started using AMOLED displays in 2017 with the iPhone X. So you guys can tell that I'm not very happy about that. And that's because AMOLED displays are subjectively just so much better looking. And the fact that Samsung nailed it 7 years ago is something that I really think that a lot of people overlook. Samsung has had killer displays, and I just can't see how an iPhone would compare to that in any manner. Now the display isn't the highest resolution, but it looks fairly good. So it has an 800 into 1280 pixel display with a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, which is pretty common for the day. Whereas this phone has a 1440 into 2960 pixel ratio. So that's this is a very high quality display, which is actually a lot higher than a lot of TVs out there still. And looking at another cool thing is look at how much Samsung brightness has improved. So Samsung has been able to make their displays a lot brighter. So this just looks so much brighter than that. And as I said before, this is a 5.3 inch display. This is 6.3 inches. And this is running 4.1.2 Jelly Bean. So this was the maximum upgraded. The phone started off with 2.35, which was gingerbread. So it came up to Jelly Bean, and after that there was no support. It has a dual-core 1.4 gigahertz Cortex chip with 1 gig of RAM. In comparison, this phone has an octa-core Exynos processor with 6 gigs of RAM. So this is it's a huge difference. And let me just show you some benchmarks that I ran. Now these benchmarks are, I'm not going to say the most accurate because simply saying the apps are just not supported on this. So I had to find older versions. So it's not going to be a subjective comparison. However, it'll give you a decent idea of what's going on. Let me just show you guys. So look at Antutu. Antutu is just ridiculous. So here you guys can see that the GPU wasn't even counted here, to be honest. It's just a 0. That means that it wasn't even able to run the graphics test. But the score is just 12,000 versus 200,000. So that's a jump of 20. So this is 20 times better in terms of graphics. And look at Geekbench, which is even more astonishing. This has 367 on single core, whereas the Note 8 has 2019. Look at the multi-core score, again, just 10 times faster. 697 versus 6,791. So phone technology has come a long way, and I'm happy about it. It's just really cool. Not to mention, look at the way that the phone, the display is now. It's nice and curved, and there's a lot of different, it just looks good. And another thing I'd like to point out was the stylus came out like this. So you could see the stylus attachment right here. You'd pull it out, and that's what it'd be like. The Note 8 has a really genius solution. So it's actually flush with the body. It kind of pops out like this from the body. And if you want to tuck it away, you'd never know that there's a stylus in there unless you know about it. And it's very hidden. That's kind of cool. So if, say, you're not the kind of person like me who doesn't really use the stylus a lot, you can just have it in there and really forget about it and use the phone as normal. And that was kind of a little bit difficult with this phone because it was very clearly seen. Not to mention, if you got any case with it, you'd have this huge hole cut out for this. Whereas with this phone, it's really just not apparent, and it's a lot nicer. Now, moving towards the back, this phone has all glass on the back. This has this plastic cover thing. There's this dual camera setup, fingerprint sensor, heart rate monitor, and all that, and this has nothing. So there was no form of real authentication on phones at that time. You only had passcodes, so there was no biometric of any sort, whereas this had this nice, this has the iris scanner, it has a face scanner, it has the fingerprint scanner, so a lot of differences going forward. And speakers are something that's that have improved, but honestly not by much. They seem to be very similar because they're still using the single speaker setup. So the speaker on the Note 1 is here on the back, right here, whereas on the Note 8 it's at the bottom here. So now the S9 has changed it. We have a dual speaker setup, so we're definitely going to be seeing a dual speaker setup on the next version of the Note. But comparing this to this, the audio wasn't too different. And I mean, this phone is just very interesting to look at because everything about it, it's in this phone. The phone hasn't lost any of what it was meant to do, and it's kind of interesting to see how far it's moved along. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Note 1 has its power button right at the top, so that's a very weird position. So I have fairly large hands, and even with my large hands, I really can't comfortably reach the power button. I have to go all the way up here. So at a comfortable range, my fingers reach about here, and the power button's all the way up here. So I'd have to stretch up like this to turn it on. So that's a weird placement for it. I don't know why it wasn't lower, because now all these power buttons are all the way down here. So that's something that they didn't really do well. Same with the volume buttons all the way to the top. Maybe it has something to do with the way the motherboard was placed inside the phone. I'll try to get my hands on a Galaxy Note 2 and see if they've changed around the button placements, but it's a cool thing to see. And note the Samsung logo, it's kind of embossed into the back panel. It's just, it may be just a sticker that you could pry out if you wanted, but it looks nice. The frame is plastic, I believe. It's painted on. Some of the paint has started to wear off on this, but at the price I bought this phone for, I'm just surprised it even works, to be honest with you. And overall, a really nice phone. Now, cameras, I don't even want to get into the comparison. I'll just show you right on camera how different it looks. So let me just turn it over. Let me take a picture like this. And you guys can't tell clearly, but there's absolutely no detail. There's so much noise, shutter lag, drop frames, everything. So let me just... Wow, that took a ridiculously long time. Let me just do it on the Note 8. Done. So let's just look at the photos on this. And just loading up the photos takes forever. So look at the difference. The Note 8 just looks so better. The lighting, the exposure, everything. So camera game, it's come a long way. And I mean, there's not much to say. It's obviously going to change. 8 years is going to do the camera a lot of difference. And it's very interesting that despite being so old, that this phone is still stacking up somewhat. It's not really that bad. So another interesting thing here that I've noticed is that despite being so much newer, the phones aren't that different in thickness. So the phone still remains quite chunky. It's just the way it's designed now. The Note 8 feels a lot thinner. So, I mean, it's a cool thing to see again, and I'm just overall going to say that this was a very fun thing for me to do, and let me know if you guys want to see any other classic device comparisons. I'm finding these so cool to do because you just get to see the history here, and I found it so, it brought back so many memories about how I felt about tech back in the day and how I feel about it now, and I'm just so happy that I've had the chance to use all these devices because now I know that as I did before, I felt very strongly about this phone, but looking at this phone a few generations forward, I feel completely different about it. So wrapping up the video, guys, I'm just so happy with this comparison, not because of the phones, it's because this phone reminded me of the way I felt about tech in the past, and that's something that it was interesting just sitting back and thinking about how I felt about this phone when it came out and how I feel about it now with this version, the one I use almost every day. And it's interesting to see how much Samsung has evolved and how much just phones in general have evolved. So it's very eye-opening to me, and I would love to do more of these. So be sure to give me some recommendations on what kind of phones you'd like to see. Would you like to see maybe the Galaxy S, the original one, versus the S9 or something like that? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll be sure to try to find some of these older phones to do more comparisons on. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and follow me on social media for behind-the-scenes updates and just day-to-day stuff. Thank you guys for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.